So you have big goals, emotional ambitions, but not the zest to work. Let me say something bold. Most people will fail to realize their goals. They'll carry them unfulfilled into old age, and eventually life and their emotions will just tune out. This will be yet another video you watch. I will be yet another YouTuber who preaches, and your emotions on your goals will just fizzle out. So let's change the narration to something more pragmatic. I'm not going to tell you to apply any productivity principles, at least not without giving you context and not without giving you justification. So a perspective, a seed that will change and that will make you want to do things a little different this time. But there's a reason why you've stumbled upon this video today, and in the next few minutes, I'll share with you a perspective, a thought process no one really talks about in this space. So as James Clear always puts it, you don't rise to your goals, you always fall to your systems. Without further ado, let's go. Let me be very transparent with y'all. I've watched videos from other creators on the same very topic to get inspiration and ideas to make this one. There's Ali Abdal, there's Justin Sung, there's even Laila Harmozi talking about this very topic. Very good videos, by the way, from a metric and how it's performing standpoint, but I think there's still the why aspect of all this missing. Why should one have systems and not just goals? I think that's a very critical question you need to answer. So one common thread from Ali and Justin is their medical background. So their references, their analogies are from the medical study world. I think, if I'm not mistaken, their audience is student-centric who have a lot of context around studying and getting better at crafting their skills. And as a result, a lot of their videos are centric around giving you tools to achieve that very topic. Great stuff, no denial, no doubts. I'm not dismissing any of this, but I feel we need to take it a step further, scope in just a little bit more, and dig deeper. While they talk and draw medical analogies, I'm an engineer, so I'm more of the first principles, root cause analysis kind of guy. You see where I'm going with this? So I think it's very important that we address this cause and not just a symptom. So before I can elaborate on systems and productivity tools and any of that, let's try a small engineering exercise, an exercise that will help us understand the root cause of a problem. This technique that we're going to jump into was developed by Sakichi Toyoda back in the day. A very pragmatic, unbiased approach to questioning a problem statement 5 levels deep. So the hope is that usually around the 5th iteration of this questioning, you're able to draw some conclusion as to why this problem even exists. Unless, of course, your problem statement in and of itself is very vague and unclear. On that note, let's challenge James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, a New York Times bestseller, by the way, as to why we need systems and not just goals. It's a big claim we're kind of going against, so I guess let's go. So 5 whys on creating systems and not goals. Claim, build systems, not goals. Let's challenge the claim, right? Okay, why would I want to create a system and not goals? Why are goals not good enough? One train of thought, and hopefully you'll agree to this, is that goals are very emotional. A motivational piece, a dopamine hit at the end of the day, whatever. I think you get the point on this. It's very emotional, right? Now, since goals are more than likely going to be emotional, I would expect it to be, by the way, and in fact a little worried if it's not emotional, right? There's no such thing as a pragmatic goal, I think. It's always an emotional goal. Anyway, so the problem with emotions is that they will fail you, 100%. It's a fleeting commodity. Whether you like it or not, this is just the way it is. Emotions will always fail you. Let's take my own materialistic goal just as an example. So I want to own a Lamborghini at some point and someday in life, right? It's not enough for me to just think about this from time to time or hang a picture of it on my wall. It's not going to move the needle, right? Quite honestly, that won't land me anything, and the world won't magically align itself to give me that because I just had that 10 minute of a quick burst of emotion about it, right? That's not just going to happen. The only way I'm getting close to it is by putting my feet to the ground and moving towards it. That's the only way I'm actually getting that. Bringing us to why number 2. The next claim to challenge is, why will emotions fail you? It's a very important question to ask. Challenge this claim and the second layer of the why, if you will. Why are emotions an issue, and how and why will they fail you, right? Very simple question. Your emotions will fail you and will be superseded by emotions of higher order and magnitude. And it's coming from an angle of not wanting to discomfort you at any point of time. So I guess the equilibrium state of mind and body is to not be stressed and dissatisfied or discomforted by any means, period. This is just the way our mind works, and that's just the way it is. So as promised, we do need to dig a level deeper because it's 5 whys, remember? Let's ask this question again. Why? Why does your system resort to defaults? Simple answer is no one likes to suffer. All systems are fighting to keep functionality without over-exhausting the available resources that it has. That's basically how it works. The default human instinct is to keep neutral or just stay happy all the time. And going another layer in, the 5th why, right? Why don't humans like to suffer? I mean, this is a broad stroke, I guess. It's too much of deep dive for one video, and I guess the gist of it is, at least my train of thoughts is, it's philosophy blended with religion and psychology and all that good stuff, right? We simply do everything in our power to not be distressed. come so far in human existence that now the bar of discomfort is pretty low. You don't have to worry about being eaten by wild animals, nor do you need to worry about eating a wild berry for your next meal. So I guess where I'm going with all this, the bar for discomfort is super low. So now are you telling me, kind of tying the knot together, are you telling me you're going to fight against basic human instinct? The long spiel was to get to this one question. You've done a 5i on why isolated goals don't work. All roads lead to this simple fact, is that it simply goes against human instinct. That's probably why just mere goal setting won't work for you. Where are we driving towards? What are we moving towards? Right? Basically, we need to put measures in place to make the probability of you working towards a goal, that emotional burst, to be just higher. We got to make that probability go higher. This is why you need systems in place. Systems is more than likely the one-stop solution for any emotional goal that you conjure, for it to come to life anywhere, right? You need a roof. So you needing a roof over your head, food to eat and clothes to wear is an evolutionary human need, the fundamentals. And as a result, this is always taken care of without needing systems nor goals. It's more primal in its existence. So the logic is kind of very different when it comes to these foundational and fundamental necessities for your existence. The Maslow's law, if you will, right? And anything above this basic need, you need intrinsic or extrinsic push to make things happen. And your only solution that I can conceive is systems. I could have started this video with a productivity hack and, I ran this monologue, this elaborate spiel to disprove an asinine ideology of running behind motivation. That's basically what I did. Bringing us to part 2 of this video. And if you found this video helpful so far, consider subscribing and sharing it with someone who really needs to hear this today. And you definitely don't want to miss out on what's to come because, the next action's on systems, and who better to talk about systems than an engineer, right? So, without further ado, let's get into it. Granted, the impetus to think in systems should stem from that emotional goal, the one that we just discredited, right? Without a goal, there's no need for systems, at least for the most part of it, right? When we talk about systems, we have a list of inputs, and then we've got a list of outputs that build the system in and of itself, right? And one of the most crucial, the most critical ingredients that go into your system is, of course, your goal, without which you don't really need a system. So you need to be able to see this tunnel vision, a vision that you're willing to build foundational systems for. We need this, so we need to use this passion to start constructing systems. That's essentially what we're trying to do here. So you've got goals, you understand that you need a system, you understand that you need inputs, you have a couple of outputs for a given system, and there you go. But one of the things that you need to understand is for you to build a system, or need for you to build a system, always stems from something more emotional. I think we should use that to our advantage to build systems. So I understand we've spoken a lot about systems, a decent bit about it at least, and I think it's foundational to also talk about what a system actually is, what it's going to do for you. So the way you want to look at system is it's basically a no-brainer routine, a routine that you don't need to think about, and something that feels second nature to you and sort of is intrinsic to your existence. That's when it's a true system. So let's discuss some of the inputs and outputs that come from the system that you're building. Like I said before, a system will have a set of inputs, and then you will have a set of outputs that kind of make up the system. So the first part to this is building your system, which will be discussing the inputs. So how do I help you build a good system? Naturally, why you've sat through this video for this long, right? So let's get into it. Your primary input should be the following. You've got a very clear-cut defined goal. The goal is very important. The sacrifices you're willing to make for this goal. Yes, you need to lay out, what you're ready to compromise to kind of see this goal through. It's very important. Next would be timeline for your goal, if applicable, but I think it should be more than likely applicable because if you've thought through your goal good enough, you also have a timeline laid out, right? And the next one would be how you would decide to track your progress. Your environment, your place would be another input. You could build your own, but this is just kind of what I think a good set of inputs should look like, right? The adjustments, the accommodations that are needed to breeze through your anticipated frictions, rewarding systems, etc., etc. You get the point. You have a bunch of inputs that make this process seamless. Now, your outputs would look something very similar to what I'm showing you on the screen. You have reduced decision making when the hour arrives. You will be on autopilot when you get used to it, if you've done it reasonably long enough. And the core human behavior issues are addressed. You aren't letting anything to chance and emotions. Everything is laid out, planned out, and this is your output. So you basically execute and fly on this express lane, right? You achieve and you celebrate at the end of each goal, of course. Your system will have a way to tell you that what works, what doesn't work, what needs course correction, and it tells you your tendencies, the impulses you indulge in, and it can help you better prepare for the next system that you're building, system 2.0, if you will, right? So to summarize my thought process on all this, you got a system, you've got a set of inputs, you got a set of outputs. Your inputs should more than likely look something like this if you want a good system anyway, right? You got to have your goals, you got to have your timelines, you got to predefine your environment. You got to know what the friction points are, and you got to kind of have a mental image of where you're going with this goal and with your system. Then when you look at the outputs, it's no brainer. You have a system which kind of puts you on autopilot for the most of it, at least not the first. If not the first, the nth iteration of your system building will have you on autopilot, which is what you want ideally, right? And other things amongst your output would be basically you having feedback to what worked, what did not work, what your tendencies, what your impulses are, etc., etc., which would essentially feed back to making a better system, which is a perfect, from an engineer's standpoint, right? This is what you want at the end of the day, that you have some sort of feedback to course correct, and each iteration of a new system that you're building would lead you to the goal, would make your goals seem more reachable, seem more within your, realm of reach. This is what you want when we talk about goal setting and systems around this goal setting. There you go, folks. You've crafted a perfect system with the perfect feedback loop for improvement in course correction as required. All these tools these famous YouTubers keep talking about are aids on your transport system or your transport system on the system level, now that you have a mental image of what systems look like. Pareto's distribution, the Zeigarnik effect, eat the frog, all of which, etc. You get the point. So you need good inputs and closed loop feedback to improve your system constantly and give the best possible output you possibly could derive, right? You always need good tools and the good framework. So I guess we can go down a rabbit hole with each of these inputs and go over each of these outputs, but I'm going to spare you for this video. I think I've given you a lot to mull over for this one, and I just want to leave you with this thought. Good systems take trial and error, and before you can set it on autopilot, you really have to just play the game. Eventually, you're going to get to that point where you've built a perfect system for yourself and you don't have to give it much of a thought. That's it for this one, folks. Do consider subscribing and smashing that like button if you found this useful. And thanks a lot for watching, and until next time, peace.